Hey everyone, David Nuño here. Up to the second college football. This is episode 5, and we do it for the Saturdays here. And what a great show we have for you. We got Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, been covering college football for a long, long time. And how about our big game showdown? Ole Miss, Alabama. Does Ole Miss get over there on the Tide? We also got to have reports from Arkansas, Michigan, and Florida. Smash the like button, like this show, subscribe to it, do it all. It is up to the second college football. All right, let's get it cracking with Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. So much to get into here in the world of college football, and I guess everyone wants to know your thoughts on the big game, UConn-Vandy. I'm kidding.
Wait. I talked about this a lot on Saturday Down South podcast. It is like a Hallmark movie that you know how this is going to end. You know 5 minutes in that this is an opportunity for the next hour and a half or whatever 94 minutes that Hallmark movie runs, that you just get to turn off your brain and you just get to enjoy this, because those teams are so epically bad that it's almost so bad it's good. You need to consume this game regardless of the fact that we have like the best slate in SEC play in 5 years. It's also because of UConn and Vandy.
Absolutely. I had to ask you because I knew you would have a good response for there, but let's start off with the big one. Ole Miss, Alabama. Does Ole Miss have enough defense? We know they have the offense. Do they have enough defense to slow down a younger Alabama team?
They have more defense than they had last year. There's no doubt about it. Chance Campbell, the Maryland transfer, has been huge for that group. They look more comfortable in DJ Durkin's defense. They're not going to get run over the same way that they did last year. And part of that is because Alabama just doesn't have the chunk play ability that it had with Mac Jones at quarterback, with Jalen Waddle, with Devontae Smith. Do they get enough stops to win, though? No, I don't think they do. I think this is more like Bama 45-38. The over should hit in this one. I know the over-under 79.5 in this game, which is just outrageous. I don't think that Ole Miss is able to quite get those stops that they need, that game-changing play, an interception, to be able to flip the field, and all of a sudden Ole Miss takes a lead, and you got this Alabama crowd kind of wondering, oh, man, is this about to happen? Is Saban about to lose to a disciple for the first time? I think Ole Miss keeps it close. I'm surprised that spread is 14.5, but I can't imagine a scenario in which Ole Miss defense really shuts down Alabama. Alabama gets enough points to be able to win this one.
All right, so how good has Matt Corral been this year? And I mean, where is he in your Heisman race per se?
Numero uno.
Yeah.
He is that guy right now. He is playing the position better than anyone in college football, and it's not close. I look at the things that he gives you from a skill set standpoint and why he's been so difficult to defend. It's because he is so tough. He can call his own number and he's not afraid to get hit. He welcomes contact despite the fact that he's a little bit undersized for what we typically think of as a quarterback in the SEC, but he can stretch the field so unbelievably well. And with the way that Dontario Drummond is playing, gosh, I mean, this Ole Miss offense with Matt Corral leading it looks so much better than last year, because last year he couldn't play against drop 8 coverage. That was his big hang up. Arkansas figured that out. And Arkansas is like, hey, we're going to be able to just intercept you all day. He had those 2 ugly games. But really, since then, and what he's done to learn drop 8 coverage and how to read it, how to be patient, and how not to force things, man, the kid is absolutely special. It blew me away that there wasn't first-round buzz on him coming into this year. There should be now. And if Alabama fans are thinking that this kid isn't capable of lighting it up, man, they got another thing coming.
So you brought up Arkansas there. They're a team that people doubt, yet keeps coming up and really defeating the moment. The way they played Texas, the way they played A&M, they came out and they seized that moment, I should say. So what do you say about their chances there in Athens against, I think, maybe the best team in college football in Georgia?
I agree with you that Georgia's the best team in college football. And I think that Arkansas, what it has done so well and what they did last week against A&M, when they play with a lead, man, they are tough to beat, because that's what allows that ground game to really get going. And when their defense can kind of pin their ears back and get into some of these obvious passing situations, they are darn good with Barry Odom. I don't think that happens on the road against Georgia. I think Georgia gets off to a really fast start, like a 14-0 type of start in this game. And Arkansas, kind of before it even knows what hit them, is facing a deficit against a really good Georgia team that is just too big to come back from. And I think they're going to have good moments in this game. I think that ground game, even with KJ Jefferson a bit banged up with the knee, should still be able to get more yards than what we typically see against a Georgia defense. But for 4 quarters, that's a different ballgame. And I think that Arkansas can cover a very big spread. I'm surprised the spread is as big as it is for that one as well. But I think Georgia's kind of able to keep them at an arm's length and win something like a 28-14 type of game.
Connor, you made some noise here, at least in the A&M community, when you picked Arkansas weeks back when Haynes was still the quarterback. Let me ask you this, because now expectations have changed with all the injuries. They've had more than just Haynes King as an injury. They've had a lot of guys gone. Are they just an average offense away from being on the cusp of elite, or no? Because they have no offense right now, like zero.
That's a good way to spin it. I like that. 2 touchdowns in 2 games against Power 5 opponents. They're not even close to average yet. And they could be, yes, because quite frankly, I kind of think Arkansas is somewhat average offensively. You know, their ground game is excellent. They can get the occasional chunk play in the passing game, but are they world beaters? Are they going to put up 50 in a given day? No, that's not necessarily their skill set. You're probably right. The offense is obviously holding them back. It's not even close. The inefficiency in the passing game has just been a killer. I mean, so many of these drives where it's 3rd and 8, you know they're not converting. And that's a problem. I was baffled at the lack of run game that they had. I thought, obviously, and you guys have probably talked about this a ton, but Isaiah Spiller not getting a carry after he has the 67-yard touchdown, just inexcusable. Jimbo Fisher has to be better. It's as simple as that. And Zach Calzada has to be better. Don't get it twisted. This is obviously players got to play. Coaches got to be able to put guys in the right spots. And I question if he's really being put in the right spots. I know they have the injuries up front, and I know that their offensive line has been a work in progress, but they've got to be able to get him some more favorable looks. They've got to be able to figure out the ground game a little bit, scheme better there. They are a really, really tough team to see scoring 30 points on a weekly basis in SEC play right now.
All right, let's talk about Notre Dame and Oklahoma, 2 teams that are still undefeated. Obviously, they're not playing each other, but just, I guess, how good are they really, knowing that they've been surviving so far, yet here they are, maybe finding their swag?
Well, Notre Dame's swag is about to end this week when they lose to Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati controls its destiny to a college football playoff spot. So I think the swag is going to die a little bit. I don't think Jet Cohn's that good. I'll just come on and say it. I watched a lot of him at Wisconsin, and I'm not really sold on him as the guy who's going to take them to the next level. Is he an upgrade over Ian Book? No, he's just not. Irish defense has been remarkable with Marcus Freeman. He's really done some good things there, the first-year defensive coordinator from Cincinnati. But I have long-term questions about that passing game and if they're really going to be elite. And then Oklahoma, man, anybody can play with Oklahoma. It used to be a thing where Oklahoma would just kind of breeze into November and they'd have maybe that one game where they play at Kansas State or maybe at Texas, and they'd have that hiccup maybe against Iowa State. But then the rest of the games, they would look like world beaters. And then we would kind of slowly talk ourselves into Oklahoma and whatever their starting quarterback was. We'd be like, all right, maybe this is the year. It just isn't the case. And Spencer Rattler was overrated coming into the year, but now you're sort of seeing that play out where he just looks rattled, part of the pun there, way too much. And it looks like an offense that's too complicated. They're not really stretching the field. Mike Woods, the Arkansas transfer, was supposed to be able to do that for him. He hasn't been featured as much in that offense. So Oklahoma's just not that good of a football team right now. And they have a lot of issues to figure out. I don't really think that they're finding their groove, so to speak. They are lucky to survive. But, man, I had them with a playoff projection, and I'm sort of questioning that at this point.
All right, how about Oregon, a team that just has looked really good? I don't know what to believe in the Pac-12 anymore. One week I think they're terrible. Then I see a bunch of teams winning. Now they got Stanford coming up. How good is Oregon?
Oregon's legit, really legit. And anybody who's ever listened to me on any sort of public airwaves has probably heard me speak highly about Joe Moorhead. That's my ride or die. That's my guy. The offensive coordinator for Oregon has done really, really good things there with Anthony Brown, with CJ Verdell, the tailback who's been in college seemingly forever. And I think Mario Cristobal is fantastic at his job. And that's what this comes down to. They've recruited extremely well up there. They've been able to kind of separate themselves from the Pac-12. I know Ohio State has its issues defensively. They're a train wreck on that side of the ball right now. But the way that they went in there and really imposed their will, that was a statement. That was a statement much like what we saw in 2017, where Oklahoma went in there with Baker Mayfield. They plant the flag there, and then they go on to have this great season where they end up losing to Georgia in double overtime in the Rose Bowl. But that's kind of what it felt like for Oregon. You can't really pick against them to go to the playoff at this point. About as favorable of a path as you can ask for with the Pac-12 and the way that it's played out. I think Oregon's for real. I don't think they're going to win a national championship, but I think they're going to get to the playoff, and I think they're capable of staying on the field with one of these elite teams.
All right, Connor, let's end it with the ACC. Who's the freaking best team in the ACC? I'm having a hard time seeing anybody. Wake Forest right now is the top of it.
Mississippi State is the best team in the ACC, and A&M is facing Mississippi State this weekend, so A&M might be the best team in the ACC. It's that kind of year, man. Like, it is terrible in the ACC because I came into this season saying I think Sam Howell's the best quarterback in college football. it's been a rough go. He has really missed his skill players on the outside in that backfield that they had with Carter and Williams. They just have not been the same sort of team this year. So you can kind of throw that one out the window. Clemson, who I picked to win the national championship, I'm just going to go run and hide with that one. It's been terrible. The ACC is just a train wreck. It does kind of look like Wake Forest is maybe the best. Maybe Virginia. Brennan Armstrong is playing extraordinarily well. He's the highest graded quarterback from Pro Football Focus right now. So I don't know. I think that conference is just loaded with mediocrity this year. It's just going to be one of those years where you don't really know who the best is. And when the ACC championship happens in Charlotte, everybody will be kind of like how we treat the Pac-12 championship. Cool, that happened. I don't really take anything away from it.
Connor, man, thanks so much as always.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, it's now time for our big game showdown. It's a huge one. Number 12, Ole Miss, taking on number 1, Alabama. And for our Ole Miss perspective, we've got Brad Logan from The Brad Logan Show. And from Alabama, we've got Tony Tsoukalas from BamaInsider.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Brad, let's start with you. When it comes to confidence, how is Ole Miss coming into this game knowing how well they've played, but knowing that the animal that is Alabama?
Well, yesterday, we were able to speak with Matt Corral at the press availability, and, he came and said that all the right things, and I thought it was interesting. He said, we're not really scared of Alabama. We're not worried about Alabama. But he immediately came back and said, and let me rephrase that and say that it's not Alabama. It's we're worried about us. We're worried about us doing the best we can at each practice. We're worried about what we're doing offensively, making sure we make the right call. So it's a bit of a quiet confidence, but on the flip side, it's a very, very exuberant confidence that we're seeing from the players. Not so much from Lane Kiffin. He was very quiet during the press conference. He talked about very briefly about the time he spent at Alabama, about how much he respects Coach Saban, how much he respects the team. I think, Young, the quarterback at Alabama, both he and Matt Corral played in California. They talked about how they didn't really know each other. But I think more than anything, specifically from a quarterback perspective, you've got someone like a Matt Corral that's had a really big year, who's done a lot of things offensively. He's got some pretty good numbers. But obviously, Ole Miss has not played on the road in an environment they're going to play in. And it's just something interesting to know, too, guys. Matt Corral's never played a game inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Ole Miss has not played in front of a raucous crowd in 2 years. So it's going to be a lot of unknowns from this team that we're going to see early in this game. And I think that's something to pay attention to.
All right, Tony, I saw this stat from Cole Kubelik. I'm going to read it out to you. Nick Saban, 115 versus SEC opponents as the head coach there at Alabama. 5 of those losses came against a team that had a bye week in the previous week. Ole Miss had a bye week. Just your reaction to that and how Alabama is preparing for this one.
Yeah, so I heard that Lane Kiffin said that it wasn't an advantage. The bye week wasn't too much of an advantage. And I kind of almost agree because it's so early in the season. I think if you went back and looked at those bye weeks, I think a lot of the losses, I think maybe if you looked back, I think South Carolina is one of the only early, that game in 2011 was one of the only early bye weeks that Alabama, I think, has lost. Those usually help you out a lot more at the end of the season. That's where, LSU usually has its bye week heading into Alabama. And I think that's more of where it can hurt, where one team's tired and the other team's well rested. It's not going to really be the case that it's too early in the season for that really to matter. Although, you look at Ole Miss and they do have that extra week of just pure Alabama preparation if that's what they want. So it'll be interesting. The stat that I actually really like is when you look back, I think the last time, Alabama's the last, I think it's like 5 or 6 and I don't know how many losses, but dating back to the Sugar Bowl against Ohio State in 2015, every team that's beaten Alabama hasn't thrown an interception. And if you look at a guy like Matt Corral, he hasn't thrown an interception yet. So that's the formula to beat Alabama is to not turn the ball over. And so when I look at this game, that's really the stat that jumps out to me personally.
Brad, let's talk a little bit about Matt Corral. Has he been better than we expected?
I think so. And one thing that we noticed as a group of media yesterday in the press conference is how much he's grown both on and off the field. Obviously, he's a leader on the field, but he's become a leader off the field as well. Someone asked the question, Matt, you're one of the Heisman Trophy, the names being mentioned for the trophy, and you're one of the names being mentioned for different awards and the touchdowns and that sort of thing. And They said, how are you dealing with that? I know you kind of stepped away from social media, but how do you deal with that and people talking about it? He says, well, the only time anybody really talks about it is in this room when I come in here to talk to you guys. So he said, we just don't talk about it. We've got a job to do. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I think that says a lot about how he approaches the media, about how he has grown over the years. But when he first came to Ole Miss, when he was sharing time with John Rice Plumlee, who's now a slot back, he was pretty, edgy. He almost rolled his eyes at many times asked questions. So now he's not like that. He's very open to answering questions, and he's very generous with his time. It's almost like he's a professional already. So he has grown exponentially both on and off the field. And, I think he made a great point about what Matt Corral is doing on the field. No interceptions so far. And as long as Matt Corral continues to protect the football, I'll be interested to see if Coach Saban drops 8 like people are talking like. Well, I don't think Alabama's going to do that very much. I think they're going to force Ole Miss to run the football. And if Ole Miss can run the football effectively on Ole Miss, they may have a shot here. But I think it's going to be very difficult, frankly. I think Alabama's loaded defensively, and Ole Miss is going to have a very difficult time scoring on the Crimson Tide defense. I just feel like that if Ole Miss has a chance in this game, you're going to hear names like Jerrion Ely and Snoop Connor having big days, and those are the 2 Rebel running backs along with your Henry Parrish Jr.
All right, Tony, let's get the other perspective of the quarterback, Bryce Young. How has he looked, in your opinion, through these first 4?
He's looked great. 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. And if you look back at the interception, it bounced off the chest of Jamison Williams. So, you could argue it really wasn't too much of Bryce Young's fault. He was as close to perfect as you can be against Southern Miss, albeit it's Southern Miss. But I think when you look at his performance as a whole, the thing that stands out for Bryce Young this season is just how well he's performed under pressure. It'll be interesting to see, how he does against Ole Miss, because it seems like that will be a little bit different situation. I don't think Ole Miss is going to pressure him too much. It looks like they're doing a lot of drop 8 this year. And so, I know they have one of the better defensive linemen in the SEC, but I think I'm not sure how much he's going to be pressured when throwing the ball. So it's going to be about his decision making and his inability to kind of hit the right guy and find the right guy. I think Alabama dealt against a drop 8 coverage against Arkansas last year. You saw Mac Jones. It wasn't the most exciting game from an Alabama perspective, but he hit all his checkdowns and they won 52-3. I don't think it's going to be that easy against Ole Miss by any means, but I do think that Alabama will be able to consistently move the ball because of Bryce Young's awareness and his ability to kind of distribute the ball and hit that open receiver. And then I think Alabama is going to be able to run the ball on Ole Miss's defense as well. And so that should be able to kind of maintain drives. And from an Alabama perspective, I think they're hoping that they can stay on the field a little bit longer because, I know you can say that, Alabama's defense is going to stop this Ole Miss offense, but it doesn't look like anyone's slowing down this Ole Miss offense. So I think the defense is going to need all the help it can get. And if that's long drives from the offense to kind of provide that rest, that'll certainly be welcomed.
Brad, is there fear out there that Lane Kiffin's going to bolt for a different job at the end of this year?
I think so, yes. And I think that, Lane Kiffin has got the chutzpah. He's the type of person that, tweets from the Los Angeles airport. He's got a very fervent following on Twitter, and he fits in just fine at Ole Miss. And I think he's done an incredible job over the last couple of years, this year included. But I think Ole Miss fans are very nervous that if the right job opened up, that Lane Kiffin would leave. Absolutely.
All right, so let's get a final game analysis here from Tony and Brad. Tony, what does Alabama have to do to win this game?
Like I said, intercept Matt Corral, get in his head, make sure he makes mistakes. He's a player that has made mistakes. I think he threw 14 interceptions last season. If you can get more to that Matt Corral than the efficient Matt Corral that you've seen this season, I think that's how they, force Ole Miss into a mistake on offense and then be able to capitalize that with a long drive on defense and then just kind of build up a lead. And then I think it will snowball from there. But that's a lot easier said than done because this Ole Miss team looks like a juggernaut so far.
And Brad, what does Ole Miss have to do to get a victory there?
Sustain drives. I think the number one thing Ole Miss cannot do is go 3 and out and force their defense on the field. if Alabama puts those long drives together, that's going to prove very difficult for Ole Miss to come back or to stay in the game. I think for Ole Miss, they need to score quick and score often. The defense last year was really bad. The defense this year is pretty average. So from an Ole Miss perspective, I think that says a lot about how they've improved defensively. But for Ole Miss to win the game, it's going to have to be a shootout. I think Alabama's going to score. The question is can Ole Miss outscore Alabama? And we'll learn that soon enough.
Brad, Logan, Tony Tsoukalas, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
All right, now time for the big storylines in college football. Looks like Arkansas is beating everybody that they come across. And this upcoming weekend, their biggest challenge of the year. Yeah, that's right. They go to Athens and take on Georgia. We've got Tera Talmadge, Pig Trail Nation, with us again here on the program to break it all down. And Tera, just how cool is it to have game day involved with an Arkansas game, taking on one of the best teams in the country after beating one of the best teams in the country, at least at the time?
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. What's going on with Arkansas is incredible to watch just because of what they've been through over the past, I don't know, like 5 years, I guess you would say. And so going into this game against Georgia there's so many different storylines that you can follow, just being that they're still undefeated when I think a lot of people would have probably predicted them to be maybe 2-2 right now on the season. And coming off that win over A&M and breaking that losing streak, it's just things seem to be rolling so well for the Razorbacks right now. And they played Georgia fairly decent last season. So we'll see what it's going to be like this year.
It feels to me that these players just believe in this situation, and maybe it's because they've been there with so many super seniors there and just veteran players. They just believe in what Pittman does and his philosophy.
Absolutely. It sounds so cliche to say that everyone is just bought in, but I think that really plays a huge role right now. I mean, that's why so many of those guys came back for another year, because they believe that they can get it done with Sam Pittman as their head coach. I think that he has truly changed the culture and helped these guys believe in themselves as well. And we're seeing it on the field and the way that they're playing. They know that they can be successful out there with the talent that they have and the coaching that they have.
Tera, so you got Texas first, then you got A&M. Now you got Georgia coming up. Georgia's favored by 19.5, okay? And I understand they're at home. How does the team, how does Arkansas look at that as motivation, as anger, as just kind of expected the way Georgia's been? How are they looking at it?
I mean, when you look at the scores, just straight up the scores that Georgia has put up this season so far, it kind of makes sense. I mean, they've just been straight up embarrassing people on the field. I think they're coming off of a shutout over Vanderbilt. So it doesn't surprise me that they're favored by that much, but it's also kind of rude to say that to Arkansas because of how well they've been doing to this point. And the teams that they've played, it's not just that they're undefeated, it's that they're beating ranked teams. And so that's huge for this program. And I think that they're fully capable of winning that game against Georgia. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be a straight up battle for the Razorbacks, but at the same time, I mean, 19 points is a bit much, I'd have to say.
Tera Talmadge with us here. All right, Tera, so how are they doing health-wise? I know, obviously, KJ got banged up a little bit in the game with A&M. Just overall, what are you hearing?
I mean, I think that KJ is probably going to be fine. And he's going to play a huge role in this game because we saw what happened when he came out against Texas A&M. I was just telling you earlier, I was like, I swear there's got to be some sort of curse at AT&T Stadium, but thankfully he's going to be okay. And I mean, he is the leader of that team. He fits that offense so perfectly, in my opinion. And so it seems like Arkansas is going to be very healthy going into this game against Georgia.
What does this game mean for Sam Pittman? I know he was the O-line coach there at Georgia before. Has anything been made about his relationship there and his time spent there in Athens?
I mean, he always likes to say, you know, he really enjoyed his time at Georgia and he still loves that team. But at the same time, this is another game. He's always wanted the job at Arkansas. This was his dream job and he wants to stay here and make the state proud. So it doesn't really matter if he's going up against a team that he really enjoyed working for. It was interesting last year playing against some of the guys that he recruited, and I'm sure that would be the case as well. But it's just another game for Sam Pittman is what he's been saying, even though I'm sure he'll probably shake some hands and say hi to a few guys afterwards.
All right, last thing for you. What is the key for an Arkansas victory? They've been doing it this year against the teams they weren't expected to beat. They've done it twice. What is it going to take against Georgia?
Defense. Just the way that Georgia has been putting up so many points, I don't think they've faced a defense like Arkansas has. And honestly, the defense is what's been keeping Arkansas in the position that they're in, I think. Like, yes, the offense has been good, and you're seeing a lot of guys come into their own. Like Traylon Burks showing up against A&M was huge. And I think he has to do it yet again against Georgia. But that defense has to be able to slow Georgia down because you cannot let them put up 40-plus points on you.
Tara, we appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, moving right along, we've got 10th-ranked Florida visiting undefeated Kentucky. Florida's won 16 times straight. They're in Lexington. With a Gators perspective, we've got Adam Silverstein of OnlyGators.com. And Adam, thanks for joining the show, my friend.
You got it. Thanks for having me again.
So I talked about in the intro there, is this streak going to continue there in Lexington?
Yeah, I think it should. I mean, look, Kentucky's an extremely talented team. I love what Mark Stoops is doing with them. Some years they are able to get over that hump just a little bit more than they are others. This year, impressive so far, no question about it. Haven't really played anyone. I don't think beating Missouri by a touchdown at home is, indicative of they're going to go ahead and now go beat Florida. But look, interesting game. Anytime Florida plays in Kroger Field, it's a very difficult atmosphere. So I do think it's going to be an interesting one.
So I remember during preseason, during the summer, there were a lot of reports that maybe Emory Jones could be in that Heisman conversation. People expected him to be a guy that was going to light it up. I know he had a little setback, but how are things there at the quarterback position, especially with Anthony Richardson being healthy again?
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway coming out of the last game, the Tennessee game, was it's time to put some respect on Emory Jones' name. I'm not saying this guy's a Heisman Trophy contender. He's not. I'm not saying he's a top 10 quarterback in the nation. He's not, at least not yet. But there's something to be said for a guy who struggled against two non-conference in-state rivals, a group of 5 teams, and then turned it on against Alabama of all teams, and then now had the best game of his entire career, setting a record last set by Tim Tebow, 200 pass, 100 rush yards in a single game against Tennessee. The guy's playing extremely well. I think people need to recognize that Emory Jones is playing better. And now Anthony Richardson's healthy. You have that additional element, the electricity that Richardson brings to the field. Florida's offense is looking a lot more potent than people gave it credit for being.
How are they doing that on the ground, by the way? Because it's a collection of guys, correct?
It is. It's a 3-headed attack. Malik Davis, Naquan Wright, he's pretty much the unsung hero of the group, and Dameon Pierce, and especially, I mean, I think all 3 guys have NFL potential. Dameon Pierce has a little bit more of the size. Malik Davis has that Alvin Kamara catch and run type of ability. I'm not saying he's Alvin Kamara. I'm just saying he has the same ability. But it's a 3-headed attack. But what's making it all work, the running game, I believe it's number 3 in the FBS right now. Emory Jones, the running lanes for him and Anthony Richardson. It's the offensive line. People are not giving enough credit to Florida's offensive line. It's been a much maligned unit over basically Dan Mullen's entire tenure. They're recruiting. They mostly recruit 3-star guys, a couple 4-stars, and people don't think you can have a good offensive line without getting those 5-star studs. Florida's doing it right now. That unit is the reason for the Florida offensive success right now.
Yeah, I'm reading the stats, 336 yards per game on the ground. Let's talk a little bit about the turnovers. Now, Kentucky's undefeated, but yet they're at -9 when it comes to turnovers. So is Florida just like, let's go?
Yeah, the Gators defense hasn't been a turnover machine really in the last 2 years, but especially this year. But what you're seeing a lot from Florida is some great pressure from the defensive front 7. It seems as if Todd Grantham has dialed back what he's always so criticized for, which is the heavy blitzing, especially on 3rd down. And I think he's doing that because he knows he has the dudes up front to get pressure on the quarterback without blitzing. So if they're going to get that pressure, and the secondary, it should get Kier Elam back from injury. If they have their top player back on the entire defense coming into Kentucky, I do think there's an opportunity for Florida to get a couple turnovers in this game. And if that happens, you give that offense more opportunities, it could get away from Kentucky pretty quick.
All right. And along those same lines, what are the keys for a Florida victory?
I mean, you saw what happened early in the Tennessee game with some of those receivers and Hendon Hooker really taking advantage of Florida's depleted secondary. If Kaiir Elam is not playing, that's going to be an issue again. They have versatile offensive weapons, the Wildcats, including Wan'Dale Robinson. So it's going to really be key to ensure he doesn't get away from them like Tennessee's receivers did in those first couple of, or really the first quarter. And Will Levis, he's been able to stretch the field deep, but he's been a little inconsistent over the past couple of games. So if Florida is able to just kind of keep him in the box a little bit and play well in the secondary, I think they're going to win the game pretty handily.
All right, Adam Silverstein, OnlyGators.com. Adam, thank you so much, man.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we're going to finish up with Michigan and Wisconsin. The Wolverines are still undefeated, and they're taking on a Wisconsin team that is definitely battered and trying to get over that most recent loss to Notre Dame. With a Michigan perspective, we go to Chris Balas from thewolverine.com. Chris, how are you, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. So, all right, so I know this game has lost a little bit of its luster because of what has happened in the last couple of Wisconsin games, but it doesn't matter to Michigan. It's just another game on their schedule, right?
Yeah, and after getting blown out the last two times they've played them and gotten decimated, 700 yards on the ground in the last two games for Wisconsin. They were emasculated last year, and they remember it. So, and they haven't won at Wisconsin since 2001. So I think everybody that saw that Wisconsin-Notre Dame game understands that was a tougher game than the score indicated. I think Notre Dame had 9 rushing yards. So this is a different challenge, though, this Michigan team. It's all about matchups. They've got to win in the trenches for the first time in 3 meetings in order to get out of there with a win. Tough place to play, and Wisconsin, is going to be playing for their lives, having gone 1-2 in their first 3 games.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that Michigan had not won at Camp Randall since 2001. Goodness. So what has happened over the years? Have they been close? Have they been blowouts? Just kind of give me a rundown.
Yeah, well, Rich Rodriguez happened, right, and changed the culture of the program. But they've been losing in the lines of scrimmage there, and they haven't been close. I really can't remember the last time it was a barn burner up there, maybe 2005, 2003. So they just have not played well up there. They had a couple injuries. Chad Henne back in the day, people remember him when Michigan had great offenses under Lloyd Carr, was hurt, so he didn't get to play there. But more than anything, they've just gotten beaten up, and it's what Michigan used to do Wisconsin before Barry Alvarez got there. The tables have finally kind of been turned. So Michigan's more finesse, and Wisconsin's considered the bully ball. So they've got to change that if they want to win on Saturday. And it really starts. I know that everybody's talking about Graham Mertz, but I expect Wisconsin to try to run the ball. Michigan's going to have to stop the run. That's where it starts for this game.
How has Cade McNamara looked, you feel, this year? How has his growth been through 4 games?
Hard to tell because they don't let him throw, right? 15 times a game, and he had a bad half, and now everybody's calling for a change. Everybody wants the freshman in there, J.J. McCarthy, who's going to be a great quarterback. But to say that he, hasn't achieved what they want him to, I don't think that's fair because they're running the ball so much. So we'll see what happens. This is his first real test on the road in front of a crowd. He went into Rutgers last year, did a nice job in front of no crowd and a Rutgers team. So this is where we really find out a lot about him this week.
Help our audience understand Michigan's defense there, particularly in the red zone and on 4th downs. How have they held up?
Yeah, they've been practicing a ton in the red zone, and it's a bend but don't break defense. Whereas under Don Brown, the previous coordinator the last few years, press man, if they throw it over your head, well, you better get to the quarterback before they do type of thing. They're giving up yardage, but when they get down into the red zone, they're stiffening. Those guys have played well down there. But again, if they can't stop the run on Saturday, I would expect that it's going to be a long day for them. I really believe that Wisconsin's going to own the trenches again this year. Just something tells me Michigan has not really been tested by a good running team. And I know Wisconsin isn't, but they've got those big guys up front. Should be very interesting.
I know you told me a couple of weeks back how it feels different with Jim Harbaugh this year, but are fans buying in that he has figured it out with this squad?
A little bit, because you can see the energy and you can see the intensity that was lacking last year, and you can see him more engaged. Now the proof is in the wins and losses, right? So if they were to lose their next 2 games, which is very possible, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, which is improving, then you're going to have people jumping off the bandwagon. And who knows what the team's going to do and how they're going to react, because that's when you find out about your team, is when you face that adversity.
Chris, last thing for you. What are the keys for a Michigan victory there at Camp Randall for the first time, as you mentioned, since 2001?
Run the ball enough to move the ball, because Cade McNamara was shaky in that second half. If they have to put it on his shoulders, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to do it. I expect it's going to be a low-scoring game. And if Graham Mertz does not have to throw, then Michigan's going to be in trouble. If Wisconsin can run some clock and get into that kind of game, which is what they're going to want, I expect this to be a lower-scoring affair. I think Wisconsin comes out on top.
Chris Balas of the Wolverine, thank you so much, my friend.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right, that does it for Up to the Second College Football. We hope to see you guys next week right here. Smash the like button and comment and, just watch the show over and over. Thanks, guys.